The morning sky burned bright as massive ships descended from the clouds like falling meteors. Admiral Hannah Kim stood at the window of the space station, watching in amazement as 7 enormous vessels settled above Earth's biggest cities. The ships were beautiful and terrifying at the same time, made of something that looked like crystal but gleamed with colors that hurt to look at directly. "They're not attacking," her second-in-command whispered beside her. "They're just ... waiting." Nodded, but her hand never left her weapon. In her 30 years of military service, she had learned that the most dangerous enemies were often the ones who smiled while they destroyed you. The aliens called themselves the Veteran. They came with gifts and warm words, speaking through devices that turned their musical language into perfect human speech. Their ambassador was tall and graceful, a skin that shifted colors like oil on water and 4 arms that moved with impossible elegance. When he spoke to the world leaders, his voice was gentle and kind. "We come in peace," the ambassador said during the first global broadcast. "We have traveled far to find you, and we bring gifts that will change your world forever. No more disease. No more hunger. No more war over resources. We offer you a place among the stars." World leaders were desperate. Earth was dying slowly from decades of climate disasters and wars. The oceans were rising, the forests were burning, and millions of people were starving. The Veterans' gifts seemed like miracles sent from heaven. Within weeks, the aliens had built embassies in major cities. Their buildings grew from the ground like living things, glowing with soft light that never dimmed. They shared small wonders that made people gasp in amazement. Medical scanners that could find any illness with just a touch. Machines that cleaned polluted air and water. Seeds that could grow food in the desert. But Dr. Juan Lee was not impressed. The xenobiologist had spent years studying alien possibilities, and something about the Veteran made his skin crawl. He watched as they asked thousands of humans to volunteer for medical scans, claiming they needed to understand human biology to help them better. "We must ensure our gifts are safe for your species," the Veteran explained. "Your biology is unique, and we want to help, not harm." Lee studied the scan results when he could get his hands on them. What he found made his blood run cold. Aliens were not just studying human medicine. They were mapping every detail of human brains, cataloging how humans thought and felt and reacted. They were studying people like scientists study lab rats. "They're not checking compatibility," Lee told his research partner late one night. "They're mapping our neural pathways. They're learning how we think, how we feel, how we make decisions. This isn't medicine. This is profiling." When Lee tried to share his concerns with the United Earth Council, he found locked doors and deaf ears. His security clearance was revoked overnight. His research was confiscated. His warnings were dismissed. As paranoia and fear of change, "The Veteran have given us miracles," the council leaders said. "They've cured cancer. They've given us clean energy. They've offered us the stars. Dr. Lee's concerns are unfounded and dangerous to our new partnership." But Lee knew the truth. He had seen the patterns in the data, the systematic way the aliens collected information about human behavior. We're not studying humanity out of kindness. They were studying humanity the way a farmer studies cattle before the slaughter. The Veterans' gifts kept coming. Technology that integrated with human infrastructure. Medical treatments that required ongoing alien supervision. Cultural artifacts that seemed to make humans more cooperative and less suspicious. The world's leaders praised the aliens as saviors, but Lee noticed how those same leaders had changed. They were calmer, more agreeable, less likely to ask difficult questions. "We're so grateful for your guidance," the leaders said during public ceremonies. "Humanity is ready to join the galactic community under your wise leadership." Lee realized with growing horror that the integration was already beginning. The Veteran had not conquered Earth with weapons or force. They had conquered it with kindness and gifts, making humanity eager to surrender their freedom for the promise of a better future in the shadows. Lee began to gather others who had noticed the changes. Scientists, military officers, and ordinary citizens who felt something was wrong but could not quite put their finger on what. They met in secret, sharing information and growing more afraid with each passing day. The Veteran were not the benevolent visitors they claimed to be. They were something else entirely, something that had perfected the art of conquest through seduction rather than war, and humanity, desperate and grateful, was walking willingly into their trap. As Lee watched the alien ships hovering over Earth cities, he realized that the real invasion had not begun with their arrival. It had begun the moment humanity had said yes to their gifts. Now the question was whether anyone would be left to say no when the truth finally came to light. The sky was full of alien ships, and Earth was full of grateful humans who had no idea. They were already prisoners. 3 months after the aliens arrived, they made an exciting announcement that filled the world with hope. The Veteran would take Earth's best people to their home planet to learn incredible new technologies. Scientists, athletes, artists, and thinkers from around the world would travel to the stars and return as teachers for all humanity. Dr. Minji. Park could hardly believe her luck when she was chosen. As a quantum physicist, she had dreamed of learning alien science her entire life. The selection process had been intense, with tests that measured everything from her brain activity to her genetic makeup. The Veteran said they needed to find people who could handle their advanced knowledge without going insane. Only the strongest minds can comprehend what we will teach. The alien ambassador explained during the selection ceremonies. We must choose carefully for the safety of both our species. Millions of people applied for the honor. Kata, the chosen ones, were celebrated as heroes, their faces on every screen and newspaper. They were humanity's representatives to the galaxy, bridge between Earth and the stars. But Dr. Juan Lee, still hiding in the shadows after his security clearance was revoked, felt a cold fear growing in his stomach. He watched as his colleague, Mingi, prepared to leave, and something about her excitement seemed forced, artificial. The night before departure, Mingi slipped Lee a small data chip hidden inside what looked like a birthday card. Just some research notes, she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Keep them safe for me. What? Lee waited until she was gone. Before examining the chip, what he found made his hands shake. Minji had been studying the Veteran technology in secret, and her discoveries were terrifying. The alien devices were not just advanced, they were ancient beyond imagination. Some of the components showed where patterns that could only come from millions of years of use. This technology is older than human civilization, Minji had written in her coded notes. It's been perfected over countless generations. But why would such an old race need to keep perfecting the same tools, unless they've been using these same methods over and over again? The volunteers left on beautiful ships that glowed with inner light. Families waved goodbye as their loved ones disappeared into the sky, bound for adventure among the stars. The Veteran promised they would return within a year, changed and enlightened, ready to lead humanity into a new age. But weeks passed, then months, and no one came back. The Veteran had explanations for everything. The journey took longer than expected. The learning process was complex. The volunteers were having such an amazing time that they wanted to stay longer, to absorb more knowledge. They are becoming more than human, the ambassador said during press conferences. When they return, you will see the transformation. They will be perfect ambassadors between our worlds. Lee knew better, working with a small group of scientists and military officers who had also become suspicious. He began intercepting alien communications. The Veteran used complex encryption, but human cryptographers had always been clever, and eventually they broke through. What they found was worse than Lee's darkest fears. The Veteran were not explorers or teachers. They were hunters, and they had been hunting for millions of years. They moved from world to world, studying each species, gaining their trust, and then taking what they needed. The intercepted messages spoke of processing centers and specimen evaluation. They discussed the harvesting schedule and the integration timeline. The volunteers were not learning alien science, were being turned into something else entirely. Lee discovered records of 47 other worlds that had received the same gifts, the same promises, the same selection process. Each world had been stripped of its resources and population, leaving behind only empty planets and the bones of dead civilizations. The volunteers were not dead, but they were no longer human. The Veteran were copying their memories, their personalities, their knowledge, and storing them in vast databases. Their bodies were being modified, enhanced, and programmed to serve as workers and soldiers in the alien empire. "They're not killing us," Lee whispered to his colleagues during a secret meeting in an abandoned subway tunnel. "They're changing us. They're making us into them." The worst part was the timeline. According to the intercepted messages, the main Vethran fleet would arrive in 60 days. Not the small diplomatic ships that had first come to Earth, but massive harvesting vessels designed to process entire populations. The gift-giving phase was almost over. The real invasion was about to begin. Lee looked around at his small group of rebels and felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Most of humanity still loved the Vethran, still believed in their promises. The aliens had been too clever, too patient, too kind. They had made humanity want to be conquered. The countdown had begun, and Earth had no idea it was already lost. The volunteers who had left as heroes were returning as something else entirely, and they would help the Vethran complete their harvest. Humanity had 60 days to wake up from their dream of joining the galactic community and realize they were about to become its next meal. The sky was full of alien ships, and Earth was full of grateful humans who had no idea. They were already prisoners waiting for processing. The world's armies were useless. Every weapon, every communication system, every piece of military equipment had been touched by Vethran technology. The aliens had been generous with their gifts, and now those same gifts were chains that bound humanity's defenders. When soldiers tried to fight back, their own weapons refused to fire. When generals tried to coordinate attacks, their communications were blocked or redirected. Dr. Juan Lee knew they were on their own. In the shadows of the dying world, he gathered others who had seen the truth. They called themselves the Remnant because that's what they were, the last free humans in a world that had already surrendered without knowing it. Commander Suyun Choi was the first military officer to join them. She had been a Navy SEAL before. The aliens came, trained to survive in impossible situations. When her own unit turned against her, following orders that came through Vethran-modified communication systems, she escaped into the wilderness and began hunting the hunters. "We can't fight them the way they expect," Choi told the growing group of rebels gathered in an abandoned subway station beneath Seoul. "They've studied our military tactics, our weapons, our strategies, but they don't understand what humans do when we're cornered and desperate." The Remnant made their homes in places the aliens ignored. Ghost towns abandoned after economic collapse, deep caves in remote mountains, forgotten bunkers from old wars. They moved like shadows, striking at alien installations and disappearing. Before the Vethran could respond, Lee's science team worked day and night to understand the alien technology. They managed to steal. What they discovered gave them their first real hope in months. The Vethran's greatest strength was also their greatest weakness. All their technology was connected, linked together in a vast network that spanned across star systems. Could find the right spot to hit, the damage would spread like a virus through the entire system. "It's like a spider web," Lee explained to the gathered rebels. "Break one strand, and the whole thing shakes. Break the right strand, and the whole thing collapses." Commander Choi's strike teams became bolder, hitting alien communication centers and supply depots. They learned to move fast and hit hard, using the Vethran's own overconfidence against them. The aliens were so used to compliant civilizations that they had forgotten how to deal with real resistance. But their greatest victory came when they intercepted a small Vethran courier ship carrying what they thought might be important intelligence. What they found instead was something that would haunt them forever. The ship was carrying human volunteers, people who had left Earth months ago to learn alien science and return as ambassadors. But these were no longer the people who had left. They were something else entirely. "My God," whispered Dr. Yuna Kim, the Remnant's chief medic, as she examined the rescued humans. What did they do to them? Volunteers had been changed, modified, enhanced. Their bodies were stronger and faster than any human had ever been. Their minds worked differently, processing information at incredible speeds, but their eyes were empty, vacant, following orders without question or emotion. Some of the modifications were obvious: surgical scars, Implants that glowed with alien light, limbs that moved with mechanical precision. But the worst changes were invisible. The volunteers' memories had been edited, their personalities rewritten, their very humanity carved away like unwanted flesh. "They're not dead," Lee said quietly as he watched the modified humans in their holding cells. "But they're not alive either. There's something in between." A few of the volunteers could be saved through dangerous brain surgery, their alien implants removed and their human memories restored. But many were too far gone, their original personalities completely overwritten by veteran programming. They spoke in flat, emotionless voices about the glory of serving their alien masters and the joy of being made perfect. The rescued volunteers told horrifying stories of processing centers where thousands of humans were being changed every day. They spoke of worlds where entire civilizations had been turned into worker colonies, their populations modified and controlled by veteran technology. They had seen the databases where the memories of 47 extinct species were stored like trophies. "They don't just kill civilizations," one of the partially recovered volunteers explained. "They turn them into tools. They preserve what's useful and throw away what's not. We're not even enemies to them. We're just raw materials." As the main veteran fleet approached Earth, the remnant realized that normal resistance was impossible. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and fighting an enemy that had perfected the art of conquest over millions of years. The aliens had studied humanity's greatest military minds, learned from their strategies, and prepared for every possible form of resistance. But they had made one crucial mistake. They had studied humanity's achievements, but they had underestimated humanity's capacity for rage, for desperate creativity, for the kind of vengeful fury that comes when a species realizes it's fighting for its very existence. "They want to study us like lab rats," Commander Choi said during a final planning meeting. "But they forgot that even rats will fight back when cornered. And sometimes, the rat wins." The countdown to the harvest had begun, and the remnant was ready to show the galaxy what humans could do when they had nothing left to lose but their species' survival. The sky turned black as the harvest fleet arrived. 7 massive ships appeared above Earth, each one larger than a city, their hulls glowing with the power to strip entire worlds bare. Around them swarmed hundreds of smaller vessels like vultures circling wounded prey. The veteran had come to collect what they believed was already theirs. Dr. Giwan. Lee watched from the remnant's hidden command center as the alien fleet took positions over Earth's major population centers. Their intercepted communications had predicted the veteran were nothing if not precise in their harvesting operations. "They think we're still sleeping," Commander Su-Yun Choi said, checking her weapons one final time. "They think we're still grateful for their gifts. We're about to learn how wrong they are." The remnant had spent months preparing for this moment. They had taken everything the veteran had given humanity and turned it into a weapon. The medical scanners became biological warfare devices. Communication networks became virus delivery systems. The gifts of peace became tools of war. Lee's masterpiece was a virus unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It wasn't made of code or electricity. It was made of living tissue, designed to attack the veteran's unique brain structure. Using samples from the rescued volunteers, Lee had learned how the aliens' neural networks functioned. Then he had created something that would make those networks destroy themselves. Poetic justice, Lee had explained to the other scientists. They wanted to study our biology, to map our brains, to understand how we think. Their own biology will be their downfall. The virus was hidden inside every piece of veteran technology on Earth. When the harvest fleet connected to the planetary network to begin processing, the virus would spread through their systems like fire through dry grass. It would move from ship to ship, from brain to brain, turning the aliens' greatest strength into their greatest weakness. As the first harvest ship began its descent toward New York, Lee gave the signal. Across the globe, remnant cells activated their hidden weapons. The virus burst from every veteran device simultaneously, racing through the alien network at the speed of thought. The effect was immediate and devastating. Lights began flickering. On the harvest ships, their smooth formations wavered as pilots lost control. Emergency alarms screamed through the alien fleet as systems failed one by one. The veteran had never experienced anything like it, a biological attack that turned their own technology against them. But the aliens were ancient survivors who had conquered 47 worlds. They began emergency protocols, cutting connections, isolating infected systems, adapting their technology in real time. The virus was working, but it wasn't enough to stop them completely. "Now we do this the hard way," Commander Choi announced. Over the radio, "All teams move to your targets. Show them what humans do when we're backed into a corner." The assault began with the modified volunteers, humans who had been partially converted by the veteran, but still retained their humanity. These hybrid warriors were the Remnant's secret weapon. They could interface with alien technology like the veteran, but they fought with human desperation and rage. Jae-yoon Nam had been one of the first volunteers to leave Earth. The veteran had enhanced his body, sharpened his mind, and tried to erase his memories. But they had underestimated human stubborn. Deep inside, he remembered his sister's laugh, his mother's cooking, the feeling of rain on his face. Those memories had kept him human, even as his body was changed. Now, he led a team of hybrid warriors through the corridors of the primary harvest ship, his enhanced strength tearing through alien defenses, while his human heart burned with the need for revenge. The veteran had made him stronger, faster, smarter, and now he was using all those gifts to destroy them. The battle was unlike anything in human history. It was fought in the corridors of alien ships, in the depths of space, in the quantum networks that connected veteran technology. Humans who had been farmers and teachers and students found themselves wielding weapons that could cut through starship hulls. They fought with captured alien technology, with improvised explosives, with their bare hands when nothing else worked. The veteran were confused and terrified. They had expected to find a compliant population ready for processing. Instead, they found a species that had learned to weaponize everything, their own gifts, their own technology, even their own people. Every corridor became a battlefield. Every room held a new trap. Impossible, the alien commanders broadcast to each other. The specimens are not behaving according to profile. They should be compliant. They should be grateful. They should be afraid. But fear was exactly what the humans had overcome. They had seen what happened to compliant civilizations turned into slaves, their cultures erased, their worlds stripped bare. They had chosen to fight instead of surrender, to die free, rather than live as slaves. Commander Choi fought her way to the bridge of the primary harvest ship, her team of hybrid warriors carving a path through alien defenders. Behind her, the virus continued its work, spreading chaos through the veteran fleet. Around her, the galaxy's most sophisticated civilization was learning what happened when they tried to harvest a species that refused to be victims. The harvest had begun, but it was not going according to plan. The silence after the battle was deafening. Where once the sky had been filled with alien ships, now only burning wreckage fell like shooting stars. The Vethron harvest fleet was destroyed, their massive world ships broken apart and drifting in space like the bones of dead whales. But the victory tasted like ashes in the survivors' mouths. Half of humanity was gone. Some had died in the fighting, others had been processed in the alien ships before the remnant could save them. Cities lay in ruins, their buildings collapsed and their streets empty. The infrastructure that had taken centuries to build was reduced to rubble in a matter of days. Dr. Giwan Lee sat in what used to be his laboratory, his hands shaking as he tried to read the data from the captured veteran computers. The alien biotechnology in his system was killing him slowly, poisoning his blood and eating away at his organs. He had perhaps days left to live, but he had work to finish. The hybrid volunteers who had fought so bravely were dying too.
Hi there.
Bodies could not handle the mix of human and alien technology for long. Jae Nam, who had led the assault on the primary harvest ship, lay in a medical bed with tubes running into his arms. His enhanced strength was fading, his modified organs shutting down one by one. Was it worth it? He asked Lee during one. Of the doctor's visits, all this death, all this destruction, did we really win? Lee looked out the window at the ruins of Seoul and tried to find an answer. In the distance, he could see people working to clear the rubble, to build shelters, to start over. They were free. But freedom had cost them everything they had built. The veteran databases told a story that made Lee's blood run cold. 47 civilizations had been harvested over the millennia, their populations enslaved, their cultures erased, their worlds stripped bare. Each species had been studied, cataloged, and processed with the same methodical efficiency. The aliens had been perfect predators, taking what they needed and discarding the rest. But the most shocking discovery came when Lee dug deeper into the veteran's own history. The aliens were not the ancient masters they pretended to be. Were survivors, the last remnant of a species that had been harvested millions of years ago by an even older civilization. They had escaped slavery by becoming slavers themselves, turning their pain into a weapon against others. They were victims once, Lee whispered to Commander Soo-Yoon Choi as she visited his bedside. They were exactly like us. But instead of breaking the cycle, they continued it. They became the monsters that destroyed them. The knowledge was a burden that weighed on every survivor. The veteran technology was still there, still functional, still incredibly powerful. With it, humanity could rebuild their world in days. Instead of years, they could clone new populations, terraform dead planets, become the dominant species in the galaxy. The temptation was enormous. We could be gods, one of the surviving scientists said during a council meeting. We could make sure this never happens again by making sure we're the strongest species in the galaxy. We could protect other worlds by conquering them first. The debate raged for weeks. Some argued that humanity had earned the right to use the alien technology, that they had paid for it with their blood and their losses. Others worried that using the veteran's tools would turn them into the veteran themselves. Admiral Hannah Kim, now gray-haired and scarred from the war, made the decision that would define humanity's future. Standing in the ruins of the United Nations, building, she addressed the survivors from around the world. We have two choices, she said, her voice carrying across the rubble. We can use their technology to rebuild quickly, to become powerful, to make sure we never feel weak again. Or we can choose to remain human, to rebuild slowly, to stay who we are even if it's harder. The vote was close, but in the end, humanity chose the harder path. They dismantled the veteran technology, keeping only what they needed to send warnings to other civilizations. They transmitted everything they had learned about the alien harvesting methods to every corner of the galaxy. Hoping that other species would be better prepared when the next predators came, years passed. The rebuilding was slow and painful. Children who had never known the old world grew up in the ruins of the new one. They played in the shadow of a memorial made from veteran ship parts, a reminder of the price of freedom. Dr. Lee had died just weeks after the victory, but his final message was carved into the memorial stone. We chose to remain human, when it would have been easier to become monsters. That choice is our greatest victory. Admiral Kim, now an old woman, watched her granddaughter play in the ruins where Seoul once stood. The city was being rebuilt, but it was different now, smaller, simpler, more human. The technology was primitive, compared to what the veteran had offered. But it was theirs. The galaxy would remember the war, not for its battles or its heroes, but for the choice humanity made afterward. When faced with the power to become conquerors themselves, they chose to remain who they were. They broke the cycle of predation that had consumed 47 civilizations before them. Sometimes, the greatest victory is not in defeating your enemies, but in refusing to become them.